Hi, my name's Christian Ward, and today I'm going to be talking about George Counts and his social reconstruction philosophy of education. He was not only an educator, but a real activist during his time toward a more allowing kids to be more involved in their society and making changes in the world. He was born in 1889 and he lived through 1974. And the reason why that's significant is he really did live through the Industrial Revolution, the Great Depression, World War I, II. He saw it all, and it really reflects in his beliefs and his philosophy this change that was happening, the rural to the urban, and the technology changes. He also was raised a Methodist, and even though he doesn't proclaim his Christianity later on in life, you see a lot of that missionary access in his writings and in his speeches, because he really talked like planting the seed and watching it grow and watching what these students can create for the next generation and so forth. So his educational ideas, of course, I mentioned his main one was really social reconstructionist philosophy of education. Now, what that is it educates students to eventually solve social problems of that time. So he came up with this a lot during the Great Depression, where he saw the capitalists and the wealthy were just becoming more wealthy and the poor were becoming more poor, and he believed that we were forgetting about these students who were at the bottom end of that, and we were just focusing on the rich and how the rich can affect their population more. He thought that the students, instead of just being taught about the individual, they need to be taught what they can fix for their entire society, like racism, pollution, poverty, homelessness, all these things that were going on at the time. He thought that we should be teaching students how they can avoid this that their parents didn't avoid, pretty much is what it was saying. The second one is education reflects its culture. He studied a lot of history, and he noticed that kind of like history of education really affects the society of that time, the economic society, the democracy that was happening in America. Different social changes that were happening was reflected in the education. And just like that, he saw that the history that was happening right then, that was being made at that moment, where capitalists were really taking over, he saw that trying to kind of take its leave into education, and he wanted to change that. He wanted a more democratic education for our society to continue to grow. The third thing is he was very resistant of progressivism and child-centered education. And it doesn't mean that he completely didn't believe in these things. What progressivism is it tests ideas by active experiment. So it believes that students should get out in nature and kind of figure things out for themselves. He didn't necessarily believe that wasn't true. He just believed that they didn't just need to get out in nature, and that this was more focused on, of course, again, the rich kids, and they didn't really consider the other kind of students that we're dealing with at the time, maybe the poor or the interracial or the black students. They really didn't have much to do with them at that time. And he believed that all students should be seen equally and should get the same educational opportunities. And he really believed that all students had the right to an education and should not simply be satisfied with where they are. They should all want to grow, and they should all want to develop and use their talents. That was really his main focus. So some of his educational influence, the most influential and the one that I read the most about, was the Dare the School Build a New Social Order. And this was a book that he wrote. The three main themes were criticism of progressivism, which we just talked about, teachers' roles in social reform, and ideas to improve American economy. He wrote this, like I said, during the Great Depression, and he calls for the nation to address economic and social inequalities for a better democracy. One of his second influence was he was the president of the American Federation of Teachers for a while. So this was a big deal because he took on this role during a time when communist influence was really coming in during the war, and he fought to keep it more unionized and united as a front for a democratized education. And his earliest proponent of teaching, he was one of the earliest proponents of a teacher empowerment movement. He really saw that the teachers are the heart of our education system. And this wasn't a big belief back then, so he was really one of the first ones to kind of stand up for our teachers and to kind of lead that voice and that they have rights and so forth. So the third thing I'm going to talk about is the selective character of American secondary education and the social composition of the Board of Education. These were both written in the 1920s, and I talk about them together because they were really his earliest works that we kind of see lead to his beliefs and what we see later on. So when he started to, this is really when he started to stand up for the voice toward a better society and toward creating a better tomorrow for all of our children, for all of society, not just the individual human. And so he really saw the aristocracy trying to take control in the 1920s of our education system, and he believed, no, we need to have equal opportunities for all, not just for the rich, okay? So some critiques that I read about, the main one was his term indoctrination that he used a lot in his writing, which means to instruct. And many critics kind of saw this as, and argued that it was kind of blatant mind control. And he argued that that wasn't what he was saying at all. He was just saying we need to instruct students and let them know, like, this is what our society looks like and it needs to be fixed. As for me and my critique of it, I really believe that it's a great start and that he makes some awesome points that our students don't just need to be concerned with themselves. They need to learn, like, how can I contribute to society? But I think they need to find what individually they are good at. And that we don't need to, as a school counselor, I believe we can't go in and just tell kids what needs to be fixed. We need to let them figure it out for themselves a little bit, because you can cross that line of teaching the kids what you believe as to letting them make their own beliefs. You get into a lot of ethical difficulties there. So that's really my only critique of it. But I see where he's going with this, that our students really can contribute to society, not just one demographic of students, but each student has their own individual thing that they're really good at and that their strong point. And as a teacher, as an educator, as a school counselor, we need to see that and we need to work with them and make sure that they do the best they can and that they go on to be better parts of our society. So thank you all so much for listening and have a wonderful day.